Welcome to Chandwell. My name's Michael and I'm making this N-scale model of a run-down West Yorkshire town set in 1993. After working on grand town centre buildings for what feels like years, I've made this little standalone model of a small terraced house to show at Bradford Cathedral's Heritage Open Day tomorrow. Number 6 Railway Terrace was the childhood home of Liam Thistles from 1973 to 1991, just before he was finally apprehended in Goat Beck after hiding out under the market precinct for a couple of weeks. This lovely little model was a really quick build, and in this video I'm going to show you how I designed the building, how I put it together, and some of the little details that I've added to make it complete. Before I start that though, can I ask you a favour? If you've been watching my channel for a while and if you've liked what I've done and if I give entertainment or even inspiration, I would be really pleased if you could vote for me as YouTuber of the Year in the Hornby Magazine Awards this year. There's a link in the description, it's also here on the screen, and the question is question 18, YouTuber of the Year. If you could tick that Chandwell button, I'd be really pleased. Okay, that being said, let's have a look at number 6, Railway Terrace. So this little house, which is based on Carlisle Place in Bradford, was drawn in the free application Inkscape. I largely guessed the dimensions based on pictures and the size of the Scale Scenes front door that is used on the Scale Scenes kits. It's an interesting design, as the old coal chute is round the front rather than at the back. The windows are enormous, and they're not centred on the face of the building round the back. Round the back, there was a multitude of different kinds of extension I could have chosen to model from the street, but I went for this pitched roof one. It's so wide it comes right up to the edge of the window, and the window itself does not line up with the ones upstairs. I finished off this fascinating design with a huge dormer on the roof. Since this is just one house in a terrace, I wasn't entirely sure what to do with the two sides. So in the end I decided I would just paint them black, but I didn't want the chimneys to be floating over the edge or to be chopped in half, so I made up some kind of chimney breast. I'm not really sure as to how prototypical it is, but it's just to make up the space, and I think it's turned out alright. So with the design done, printed on label, stuck to card and then cut out, I was left with a kit of parts. Each part was cut twice, once in 0.5mm card, and then once again, with larger window apertures, in 1mm card. These stick together to create a sturdy wall, with a recess into which I can stick the windows later. The chimneys are made in a stack like this to give them the correct width. I use simple PVA glue to stick the layers together. With that done, a simple dry fit ensures that the thing will go together properly. I use a scale model scenery right-angled jig to hold a gable in place, and then I use PVA glue to stick the front of the house to it. I take it out of the jig straight away to prevent it sticking to the wood. I repeat with the other side, and I use rectangles of card taken from the windows to hold the pieces as square and as true as possible. The rest of the construction goes together in the same way. I'm soon left with the carcass of the building ready to have texture applied. I paint the gable ends black now so that I don't risk accidentally painting the texture later, and I'm speaking from experience on that one. The texture is from Scale Scenes. I'm using the ashlar texture and a couple of doors. I carefully cut slits in the right place for the windows. I use my scalpel to cut out all the pieces. Once cut, I take away the white paper edge by painting along them in watercolour paint. Watercolour is ideal as it flows really nicely and doesn't require too much precision to apply. I apply it from the rear to preserve the printed surface from any mistakes. I then apply PVA glue to the building, not the paper, because if you apply it to the paper it can cause the paper to crease or warp. I gently lay the texture in place. It kind of floats on the PVA for a few seconds, which allows me to gently nudge and slide it into place on the building. I carefully work my way around the whole structure. With the glue dry, I use my scribe tool to gently push the flaps of texture around the walls. Using the tool like this ensures that I get really crisp folds. Once folded, I glue it into place with PVA. I smooth the edges with the tool, and then press firmly into place with my thumbs. I tend to add texture as individual pieces rather than folding it around the edges, because I find that this gives a crisper edge at this small scale. The lintels are printed onto the texture, but the sills need to be added separately. This serves two purposes. The real things sit proud of the wall face, and we need to wrap them over the top edge of the wall. They just stick on with PVA and then fold round. There isn't much by way of fancy detail on this house, just a strip of stonework along the guttering, which I stuck to 0.5mm card, and then I glue along the top like that. It's just one strip on top of another. Window frames are printed onto sticky label and then stuck to acetate. I'm still using the lid of a box of Lindor chocolates that I got for Christmas over 9 months ago. I cut along the frames one way and then the other, and then I peel out the bit that should be glazed. And repeat. The frames are cut out individually and then mounted into the building using PVA. I've tried to represent the slightly wider frames on the parts of the windows that open on this building, and I think that it's generally worked, especially on the front downstairs window. A really fascinating thing about buildings of this type when they're all along in a terrace is the network of pipes around the back. We've got downspouts and soil pipes, and all coming out in different places as the house is being extended and altered over the time. I really wanted to capture that kind of look with this building, and I started with the gutters. I coloured the edge of a piece of 0.5mm card with a Sharpie marker and cut off a strip. And then I just glued it along the base of the bottom layer of roof. Simple, cheap, effective. Before I added the downspout and the soil pipes, I needed the ground in place. I stuck the house to a simple base of card, and then added edges representing the ground rising from front to back. The ground itself then added on top of little supports like this, and this was covered in Scale Scene's concrete paving texture. Back to the downspouts. Let's add one here. I measure a tiny thin strip of 0.5mm card against the building. I cut it to size and then paint it black using watercolour paint. I add a line of glue to the building, and remember to touch up the ends, and then carefully drop it onto the building in the line of glue. I try my best to make it look as straight as possible. I wanted to represent the soil stack using thicker card than the downspouts, so I used 1mm card. I used the same technique, cut a tiny strip and then place it onto the model. My stack had bends to do, so I just used my tweezers to hold it in place as the glue went off. Once in place, I dry brushed some lighter grey paint onto it to try and make it look less like the edge of a bit of card and more like a cylindrical pipe. I added a few little details to finish off. Chimney pots are my usually badly cut cocktail sticks, painted with a couple of shades of paint. A black dot on the top makes them look hollow. I varnished the whole thing using Perma Protect matte varnish to give a good seal, and then I use AK Interactive Ultra Matte varnish to take away the residual shine. With the really runny varnish still wet, I brushed in some watercolour paint, really just sploshing it on to give some subtle weathering. The watercolour pools in the ridges and once dry gives a nice weathered look to the building. It's finished off with garden walls, a wall around the old coal chute, some weeds in the yard and gutter, and a little scale model scenery ladder round the back is the finishing touch. If you want to see this building for real and you happen to be in the Bradford area tomorrow, Saturday the 14th of September 2024, then I'll be at Bradford Cathedral tomorrow at their Heritage Open Day event. I'll be giving a talk at 1:30 entitled Smaller Scale, Wider Perspective, but I'll be around all day if you want to come and have a look and chat. Please do say hello if you do come, it would be great to meet you. Speaking of Bradford Cathedral, I'm moving back onto the cathedral next week. I'm going to start actually making the nave now for real. So until that video then, thank you for watching this one about my little house. Take care, and I'll see you next time.